Hello everyone, welcome to this new video for Star Wars Unlimited tier list, and today is our very last tier list video for Spark of the Rebellion, and as promised I'm going over now the leaders. So the leaders are obviously the most important decision that you're gonna have to make about your deck. What leaders should you play? And they are obviously going to determine whether you're going to be villainy or heroism. They're going to determine one of the colors you're going to be playing, and obviously they're going to determine what kind of playstyle you're gonna want, because of course each leader has its own set of abilities that will encourage you to build your deck a certain way. So for the way I rate leaders, it's always I'm trying to take into account how powerful the leaders is just as a leader, then how powerful he is once he's deployed, or early he's deployed in the game. I think that leaders that deploy in the game early are significantly stronger than leaders that deploy late, and the reason is because if you're going to be playing against a leader that deploys early, he's going to have a free unit for a significant amount of time, and if you have a leader that deploys late, you are left with a few turns without that free unit, and this huge disadvantage that you get basically can end up into a loss in a lot of situations. So basically, one of the key factors in Star Wars Unlimited is the fact that leaders deploy for free. Therefore, having the opponent have a free leader for a couple of turns before you get to deploy yours is usually a pretty big deal. So without further ado, let's go now into our first leader. Is going to be Director Krennic. Director Krennic is a control leader, of course, because of his set of color combination. Black-blue is a very controlled color, so any leader that is black-blue is always going to be a control leader, at least for now. And his ability is interesting because it encourages you to kind of do some self-damage synergy. Right now, we don't have that many cards that do self-damage. I think the only example I think we have is Death Trooper. We have Fifth Brother, but Fifth Brother needs to attack to get to this synergy going, which means that his ability may sound a little bit situational, but in reality, unit gets damaged all the time. Therefore, the +1 attack bonus is actually pretty relevant in a lot of situations. Obviously, the fact that Death Trooper is effectively a 4/1 for 3 that deals 2 damage when it comes to play is very relevant, and makes it for a very strong card in this deck, especially when combined with Energy Conversion Lab. So the ability is very strong because it just comes into play very often. And not only that, it's an ability that doesn't require any initiative and doesn't require any resources to be used. It's literally a free ability, which is also very good. Another thing that is great about Krennic once he's deployed is the fact that he does Restore 2 every time he attacks, and the Restore 2 is extremely relevant in a control deck that typically is going to want to gain HP. Something that is important to understand is whenever you play a control deck, you want to have some sort of ways to restore your HP, you have some sort of way to repair your base. And the reason why you need that is because the reason why you need this is because aggro decks play a lot of ways to deal damage directly to your face. So even if you manage to stabilize the board, there is no guarantee that you're going to be able to survive. One of the biggest examples for this is obviously for a cause I believe in that can deal up to 4 damage out of nowhere, and because this card exists, you have to have some sort of ways to repair your base. You need to have some sort of ways to keep your base healthy, and the restore is the best way to do this. And Director Krennic offers this on the leader himself, which is very valuable. Other than this, he has a pretty decent stats. 2/7 often becomes his 3/7 once he's damaged something and managed to gain himself a bit bigger, and every time he attacks, he effectively gain you 2 and lose 2 or 3 to the opponent, so it's a swing to 4 or 5, which is not bad, and you get to deploy him relatively early, which is also very good. As I said earlier, leaders that deploy early tends to be stronger than leaders that deploy late in this game. So with all that being said, how do we see Krennic? So Krennic is currently, in my opinion, the best control leader in the game. And Krennic Green specifically is one of the best control deck in the game. So I'm going to place him in A tier. He's an excellent leader. Moving on, we got Iden Versio. So I was not a big fan of Iden Versio when she was first spoiled, because I think her stats are very weak for someone that gets to deploy basically on turn 5 as a 6 resource leader, and I thought that the healing was a little bit underwhelming. With that being said, from the moment she was spoiled, she's really the leader that has gained the most tools recently. And there's just so many strong control cards that have been spoiled recently that made Iden Versio much stronger than she used to be. So just like Krennic, she gives you access to blue-black, which is the color combination you need for control deck. Because she's not green, she can play Energy Conversion Lab, which is a big deal, and green, blue, black is the strongest triad of color for a control deck in general. And she also gives you access to healing, which is very important for a control deck, as I said earlier. So, in generally speaking, she's gonna heal between 4 and 5 in a game, depending on how long the game goes. Sometimes it can go over 6. But the amount of healing that she provides is not tremendous. Utilizing her healing does require initiatives. It's sometimes an advantage, sometimes an inconvenient. Sometimes an advantage because it allows you to stall your turn. Sometimes it's an inconvenient because you need the initiative for next turn, and using the healing will deny you the initiative. So for all those reasons, Iden Versio sometimes can be an advantage or inconvenient. As a unit, our ability becomes permanent, so every time you kill something, you heal 1 automatically, which is very strong. She has very bad stats. She gets out countered by takedown by certain cards in the game. But other than this, she can be quite tough to kill with the fact that she is shielded. She's one of the best leader to pair with Overwhelming Barrage, because she has 4 attack, which is pretty good for Overwhelming Barrage, and she will, when you 1 damage for each unit killed, and obviously with Overwhelming Barrage you can kill multiple units at once. So she's one of the best leader to pair with Overwhelming Barrage, which is kind of nice. So overall, a lot of people have been saying Iden Versio is the best control leader in the game. I personally have a preference for Krennic, and this has been a long-lasting debate in the community on whether Iden Versio or Krennic was better in the control archetype. In my opinion, they are very close to each other. After playing with both, and after watching a lot of games where both were featured, I find them to be both relatively equal in power level. Iden Versio has been more popular lately, but I think it's a trend thing where because Krennic has been good for a long time, people have been playing a lot of Krennic already, and it's only relatively recently that Iden Versio started getting played. So now there's always this trend where people play the most recent popular leader. But I think overall I still prefer Krennic over Iden Versio. I think the fact that he deploys early, the fact his ability is easier to use, the amount of healing that Iden Versio will heal more on a control matchup, which he's going to stay in play for when games are very long. But against the aggro matchup, in which where the healing is really important, they will both heal about the same amount. And I think overall Krennic is just a slightly better leader. But honestly, you're playing a green Iden or a green Krennic, they're both going to be very similar decks. So it's hard for me to rate one above the other. I'm going to play Krennic first because I think he's a stronger leader overall. But they're very, very close to each other, and I think you cannot go wrong by going with either of those leaders. So I'm going to play Iden Versio slightly under him, and that's going to be that. So the main reason why those leaders are rated very high, though, is mostly because blue-black, green, especially blue-black green with energy conversion happens to be an excellent color combination for control. A lot of help. This color combination got a lot of help recently. And Energy Coverage Lab is such an amazing base, though. This is really what makes those leaders particularly strong, more than the leaders themselves, if that makes sense. But once again, I'm always rating cards related to their environment. Next, we got Chewbacca. So Chewbacca has a lot of problems. The first problem is, so his ability is actually very strong. The ability to give Sentinels to any unit is an ability that has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, FFG has not really given us a lot of cards that synergize particularly well with the ability. I think there's the only clear example is maybe Wilderness Fighters and maybe Yoda to some extent. So an ability that, in my opinion, needed to be amazing to justify the leader ended up being kind of average because we haven't seen that many units that really combined very well with the ability. As a leader unit, Chewbacca is pretty terrible. First of all, it costs 7, which, as I said earlier, is a big problem because it means you're going to spend several turns without a leader while your opponent has a leader, and that's often going to result into a loss. And when it comes into play, it can be very powerful against very specific setups, but more often than not, the opponent is going to be able to ignore him. There's simply in a control matchup, for example, like the 2/9 Sentinel doesn't do a whole lot. Against aggro, your opponent can simply just keep a Specful Soldier in his hand, and he just, as soon as you deploy Chewbacca, is going to play Specful Soldiers and disable your Chewbacca. Not only that, Chewbacca is, the fact that he costs 7 means that you might not even be able to deploy him against aggro, which is even worse. It's simply just very difficult to use. Your opponent might just be on space, might not care about the Chewbacca and Sentinels on the ground. Is my opinion one of the worst leader in the game. So the color combination is okay. Blue-white is fine, but it's not amazing. So I'm going to place him in D tier. Is simply just not a very competitive leader. Next we got Chirrut Imwe. So Chirrut Imwe is probably the leaders I've underestimated the most. I really thought this leader was very unplayable when I saw him first, and I ended up changing my mind on him because his leader ability once he's deployed is much stronger than I thought. So basically, as a leader, Chirrut Imwe is one of the worst leaders in the game. His leader ability basically doesn't do anything. A temporary +0/+2 HP doesn't do a whole lot. I've very rarely seen this being any relevant at all. So honestly, it would have no ability at all. It wouldn't really make a big difference. The quality that Chirrut has is when he's deployed as a unit. This is where really the cards start to make more sense. First of all, he has 2 extremely relevant traits. He's Force and Rebel. He's the earlier leader in the game with a Force trait, which is huge because it means that you can enable a lot of powerful Force synergies, like it binds all things and fourth throw. Chirrut is particularly strong with the it binds all things, because basically when Chirrut takes damage, he doesn't die until the end of the turn, which means that your opponent can very well just deal him 5 damage right away with a Force choke. You can play It Binds All Thing to heal him up. You can play some equipment to increase his HP total and keep him on the battlefield. And this is far more powerful than I initially thought it was. And you can really build your deck around Chirrut and make him very difficult to deal with for the opponent if he doesn't have specific tools to deal with him. By specific tools, I mostly mean Power of the Dark Side and Takedown, which unfortunately has become increasingly popular in the meta, making Chirrut difficult to make use of as of now. And the problem is because you gotta play quite a few cards to work around Chirrut, like Jedi's Lightsaber, at the very least Jedi's Lightsaber and It Binds All Things. If your opponent manages to deal with him right away, it is very backbreaking. So typically we've seen Chirrut being played in some sort of Chirrut red Jedi deck, and a lot of people argue that Chirrut is better than Luke in those contexts because he deploys earlier, is very helpful against aggro. But overall, I'm not super convinced by the card, especially in today's meta. He's just way too easy to deal with, and once he's dealt with, you got left with a bunch of cards that don't do anything once he's off the board. So I've never been a massive fan of him, even despite I happily admit that I've underestimated the card. I still haven't been convinced that he's super competitive. So I'm going to place him C tier because there are against certain decks in which he can be very strong. But overall, I haven't been super convinced by his competitiveness. Next, we got Luke Skywalker. So Luke Skywalker has one of the most powerful leader's ability in the game. Giving a shield for only one resources is just extremely effective. Only affects heroic units, but honestly, most of the best units in the game are heroic whenever you're playing heroism, so it's really not a big constraint. The biggest constraint is like you have to only give a shield to a unit that have been played this phase. This is a bit more of a constraint, but it's very strong with a lot of cards in combination with a lot of cards. Like we talked about Dispatcher, you play Dispatcher turn 1, give him a shield. If you keep that Dispatcher alive, it's going to be insane. You can now play all of your cards one turn earlier, or you can just play the card that you were supposed to play, but then you get an extra resource to give him a shield. It's very effective. Luke is also, of course, Force and Rebel, two very, very good traits to have. Has decent stat for his cost, and his ability as a leader is very strong. Being able to give a shield to a unit on attack is just a really solid. So Luke Skywalker has been a very solid leader. I think what has held back Luke is his inability to do very unfair things. He's a very fair leader. He's a leader that does this thing, and it's not a leader that does anything broken. So his game plan is very mid-rangey. Mid-rangey has suffered a lot because the best mid-range being Boba decks. It's been difficult for other mid-range decks to exist in that environment. And now that the control becomes very popular, Luke is kind of struggling a bit. With all that being said, once again, judging the leader, he's just an excellent leader, so I'm going to place him in B tier. He has struggled a bit. The kind of the looks you're going to see either going to be Luke Green or Luke Red. So Luke Red in the more on the Force synergies, and Luke Green on more of a ramp archetype, and that's usually the kind of Luke decks you're going to see. Next we got Emperor Palpatine. So Emperor Palpatine has also a pretty terrible leader's ability. The fact that you have to pay 1 and defeat a friendly unit is a massive cost, and what you get is not amazing. Deal 1 damage to a unit is okay. It's good, but then once again compared to the cost, it's not that good. And then the drawing a card is okay again, but once again you're losing bolt position for cards. It's just not worth it in a game where tempo is pretty much everything. So obviously Emperor Palpatine by himself not very good, but once again when you combine it with unit that wants to die, then he becomes a lot stronger. The problem is like right now there's just not that many great units that wants to die. The only clear example is going to be Super Laser Technician. So Emperor Palpatine as a leader is simply not great. As a unit, however, he is far stronger. His ability to take control of a damaged non-leader unit is extremely powerful. And the fact that it gets to kick in as soon as it deploys is just super relevant. He's also Force Imperial Thys, so Force Imperial, which is 2 very relevant traits. Also Officials, very important trait. And a cool thing is like basically Emperor's Royal Guard gets a permanent +1 HP bonus if you have Palpatine as a leader. So basically Emperor Royal Guard becomes a 3/5 if you play Palpatine as your leader, which is very powerful. So that's also quite relevant. His own attack ability once again is not great. So Palpatine cost 8 resources, which is kind of the big issue with him. And this is what I was saying earlier, is when a leader deploys late, it really has to justify that, because it just happens that you're going to end up in situations where you're going to be in such a big trouble for a couple of turns, because there's going to be a few turns where your opponent is going to have leaders and you don't. Obviously you can speed that up by playing some ramps. You're playing green-black, which has access to some of the best ramp in the game, so why not? The problem is that playing those ramps means that you make yourself very vulnerable, because you're not doing anything, just ramping. So what can I say about Palpatine? I think the rule of thumb is that Palpatine, if you're playing against another control deck, Palpatine is amazing because he's the most expensive, powerful leader, so he's a 4/10 as well, very difficult to kill. 4 is still a very respectable amount of attack. You can do a lot of things with 4 attacks. So he has very high stats, very powerful when deployability, and if you're playing against another control deck and you have Palpatine and he has a weaker leader, you're gonna have a big advantage because it's unlikely that the game is gonna end before you get to deploy Palpatine, and having Palpatine as a leader gives you so much more value than having any other leader in the game, almost. So in a mirror of control, Palpatine is great. The problem is, like, Palpatine is basically almost unplayable in all the other circumstances. I think if you're playing it, especially if you're playing aggro. If you're playing as aggro, you are basically never going to deploy Palpatine. That's just as simple as this. The game is always going to end before you get to deploy Palpatine. And that's obviously means that you're basically playing without a leader, which is a pretty big problem, to say the least. Against mid-range, especially against Boba, it's also kind of the same. Games often will end before you get to deploy Palpatine. And that's a major problem. And this prevents Palpatine from being any good in the current meta, where Boba decks and aggro decks are pretty much everywhere. With that being said, I do not want to place Palpatine in D tier, and I don't want to place in D tier for the very simple reason that if you think that there's going to be a meta game where pretty much everybody plays control, a very control heavy meta, bringing Palpatine can be a payoff gamble, in my opinion. So I'm going to place him in C tier. As I said, not a great leader if you are going blindly into a meta, but you can sometimes trick the meta by playing something that is not super strong in general, but in very specific case can be very powerful. And that's why I want to rate him C tier. Next we got, and another thing I want to say is that there is an inherent weakness of green leaders in this game. And the problem with green leaders in Star Wars Unlimited is that because they're green, and you can't really play Energy Conversion Lab, because double green as a color combination is pretty terrible. And the fact that green leaders cannot run the best base in the game is kind of a big problem. So it's also another weakness of Palpatine, is like, can't really run Energy Conversion Lab unless you want to play double green, but as I said earlier, double green is one of the worst color combination in the game, so you do not want to do that. Next we got Moff Tarkin. So Moff Tarkin has one of the best leader's ability in the game, the ability to spend 1 resources and tap in to give an experience token to an Imperial unit. Extremely flexible, extremely useful. Can be used in mid-range, mostly in mid-range and aggro deck. The problem is that green-black has not been a mid-range and aggro color. So the first issue with Moff Tarkin is the fact that he's doing something different. His ability wants you to do something different than what his color combination wants you to do. The color combination wants you to play late-game control rampy deck, while the ability wants you to play mid-range and aggro archetypes, which is a bit of a problem. The second problem with Moff Tarkin is that his leader unit is not amazing. 2-7 stats is simply not great, even for leaders at deposit 5. 2 attacks simply doesn't kill anything. Krennic also only has 2 attack, but he can get 3 attack relatively easily, and also Tarkin has this Restore 2, which is super relevant. Here, all you get is just a slightly improved version of your leader's ability, which is not great at all. So, Moff Tarkin, one of the best leader's ability in the game, but not a great leader unit most of the time, and also kind of an issue between. So, I think he's playable. I think you can build a pretty solid mid-range Tarkin deck, and I think he's going to get stronger as the game is going to be. He's going to get stronger as we're going to see more cards. He's also, of course, a lot more powerful in draft and limited. But in constructed, I'm simply not a big fan. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but obviously this list is for constructed 1v1 play, of course. So I'm going to put him in C tier. He's not unplayable, but he's simply just has been quite underwhelming for the reason I've already talked about. Next we got Hera Syndulla. So Hera Syndulla is the first leader that doesn't really have a proper leader's ability, but instead has a deck building rule that makes it slightly easier to build your deck, as you can play any specters in your deck without paying the aspect penalty. The problem is that so this does encourage you to play a lot of specters in your deck, But there's two problems with this. The first of all is that Spectre units are not particularly powerful. You get Sabine Wren, which is very powerful. Then you have Ezra Bridger, that is fine. And then that's about it. And all the other Spectre units are either average or sometimes even not so great. You have the Ghost, which has synergies with Spectre that obviously you want to play. If you're playing Hera Syndulla, you want to play the Ghost because there's such a powerful synergy with Spectre. But pretty much the Ghost is the only real Spectre payoff in the game. So you are playing cards that are not particularly powerful and do not have particularly powerful synergies with one another, with only the exception being Ghost, sorry. So that's the problem with Syndulla, is like she's basically she's the enabler for a deck that doesn't have any reason to exist. So FFG really has not really given us any strong reason to play a Spectre deck, and that's really the problem with the leader. And once again, if you forget about that, then she has a lot of problems. As I said, she's a green leader, so you can't. If you want to play double green, another thing as well is like one of the advantages of Hera Syndulla would be that you could play double green to be able to play the double green aspect card, and then still be able to have a variety of different cards in your deck thanks to the Spectre keyword. The problem with that, once again, is that double green is pretty terrible. So the fact that double green is bad makes also Hera even worse than she should be. So all those things together has basically been a big problem for Hera, and as a leader she's very mediocre. 4-6 for 6 is is not a good stat line at all. Just as a reference, we have Boba that is a 4-7 for 5, and the fact that she gives experience token to other units when she attack is basically a worse version of Moff Tarkin. Only works on unique unit. It's basically a worse version of Tarkin's ability. She is simply just a very underwhelming leader. So in my opinion, and until we find better Spectre payoff, she's gonna be in the D tier. Next we got Leia Organa. So Leia Organa is effectively an aggro leader, and I think the problem is that there's not that many great aggressive cards in green-white, so she always has to be combined with red because white-red is where all the aggressive cards come from. And as a result, she cannot play Energy Conversion Lab once again. And as a result, the fact that she's forced to get into green-white is a bit of a problem. But this is really made up by the fact that her leader's ability is just extremely powerful against aggro. The ability to attack with 2 units before the opponent gets to interact with you is incredibly powerful and allows you to go for massive swings of damage, claim initiative early, and really puts tons of pressure on the opponent. It is situational, like you require multiple rebel units in play to make use of it, but in an aggro deck that is not really that difficult to do. The leader as well is not bad at all. She's basically a 4-6 for 5, and she can also, of course, and when she attacks, she gets to attack with something else. So Leia has been one of the best aggro leader in the game. One of the best aggro leader in the game. She has a few weaknesses, but overall she's a very solid leader that deserves the B tier status. Moving on, we got the leaders that I've been personally the most famous for playing, and it is Darth Vader. So Darth Vader has, just like Luke, a very powerful leader's ability that allows you to ping anything, 1 damage to unit, 1 damage to base. Very good to get rid of shields, very good to kill 1 HP unit, or just very good to finish off units. Just a very handy ability to have on play at all time. The main weakness of Vader is the fact that he costs 7, which is fairly expensive. But I have to say that the leader is the best 7 cost leader in the game, arguably the best expensive leader in the game. Comes to play as 5-8, which is excellent stats, has the Force Imperial trait, and his on-attack ability is also very powerful. Deal 2 damage to a unit for free on attack is incredibly powerful. Not only that, he also has a lot of cards that are good with him, like for example you get the all the Force synergy card. You get the lightsabers, the Vader's lightsaber. Just a very, very oppressive leader once is in play. And the thing is that with ramp, you can get Vader's into play relatively early on in the game. So Vader basically suffers the same problem as Palpatine, but to a lesser extent. First of all, of course, he costs 1 less, which is a big deal. And the other advantage that Vader has is that his leader's ability is a lot stronger than Palpatine's ability. So the fact that you get a much better leader's ability, and the fact that leader comes one turn earlier, makes it a lot easier to play him. He's still going to be a deck that's going to struggle a lot against aggro. There's going to be a lot of games against aggro when you won't be able to deploy Vader. But at least in the other matchup, especially against Boba, you're going to be able to deploy him and make use of him, which is very good. So as far as if you're really looking for an expensive leader, I think Vader is the best of them. Obviously, you always want to pair Vader with green, not only because green-black being one of the best aspect combination in the game, but also because you need that ramp to be able to deploy Vader earlier in the game. So really the ramp is very powerful with Vader, because when you're ramping, not only do you get access to stronger cards, but you also get to deploy your leader faster, which is incredibly powerful. One of the other weaknesses of Vader is the black red combination. I think Vader would be a lot stronger if he was blue-black, because as I said, it's difficult to design a control deck without blue, because if you don't have any healing, you're going to suffer a lot for a cause I believe in. And the other problem as well, because you always need green, of course, and the other problem is that you don't get access to all the great sweepers. Blue-black is overall a much stronger color combination than red-black. So this has been a big weakness for Vader. But I still think he's a very solid leader, and I'm going to place him in B tier below Luke Skywalker. Or maybe below Leia as well. Next we got Grand Inquisitor. So Grand Inquisitor is a very strange leader to raid, because he's one of the worst leader unit in the game, but he has one of the strongest leader's ability in the game. So it's a bit of a tricky one to rank. The ability to basically deal 2 damage to friendly units to ready it is incredibly powerful. There's tons of cards in the game that combines very well with it. Seven Sisters or Fifth Brother, and a lot of blue cards as well with Back Pursuer, with Grit. There's a lot of good synergies. You can also kill your own stuff with it. For example, he's the only leader in the game that can kill Super Laser Technician for free, which is a very big asset. There's a lot of leaders that can kill Super Laser Technician by themselves, which can be very useful when your opponent doesn't play anything and your Super Laser Technician cannot die and you really need that card to die. But there's no other leader in the game that can do that for free. So that's very handy as well. Grand Inquisitor so the ability is just extremely powerful. Basically allow you to untap a unit, and just a really strong ability to get to do that for free. Not exactly for free, because you have to deal 2 damage to your own unit, but as a leader though is very bad. As a unit, is 3/6, which is very low stat line for something that comes to play on turn 5. Good keyword though. Force and Imperial is a great set of traits to have. Will enable you to play your Force synergy card, which is really how Grand Inquisitor is meant to be played. The red-black is really the leader that takes the most advantage of the red-black aspect combo. So yeah, so Grand Inquisitor has really been a mixed bag. He has received a significant amount of support. I think that the strongest version of Grand Inquisitor is the version that plays green, once again, for Energy Conversion Lab, but also for Super Laser Technician. There's also a couple of great cards that combines well with the ability like Rook. And you get all the black-green. You get the strongest black-green card, and then you get the red-black for the full synergies. And in that context, Grand Inquisitor can be a force to be reckoned with. I still think I would rather play, if I was playing this kind of late game deck, I would rather play a Vader deck, but he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. So I'm going to place him, and I'm going to rank him. I'm going to rank him higher than Palpatine. I think he's less greedy than Palpatine, and it works a little bit better. So yeah. Next we got the infamous AG-88, which has been famous for being considered the worst leader in the game. I haven't played tons of IG-88, so I can't tell if he's really the worst leader in the game, but he's for sure is not a competitive leader. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, he's a leader that really wants you to play an aggro deck, and black-red is not really an aggro color. Like, we haven't had really many aggro cards in this color combination. Pretty much black-red has either been a control color or a color oriented towards the Force synergy. And IG-88, of course, does neither of those things. So there's already a pretty big problem from that standpoint. The second problem is that the ability is relatively situational. Controlling more unit than your opponent is not that easy to do in this game, at least for now. And the bonus that you get from doing so is only a +1 attack, which is okay, but when you compare this to Sabine that deals 1 damage to the base for free without any restriction, it sucks a little bit. As a unit, IG-88 gets to deploy relatively early, but its stat line is very bad, 5-4. Yes, it swings for 5, which is nice, but 4 health means that it pretty much dies to almost anything. It's very difficult to make IG-88 stick to the board, and the problem is that his ability, which allows you to give raid 1 to all of your units, is unfortunately only useful if IG-88 stays on the board. Like, really, there's also a big problem between the fact that he has low health combined with the fact that he needs to stay in play to actually be useful with his ability to give raid 1 to everybody. So yeah, so IG-88 has been screwed on almost every part of the game. He's been screwed by his stats. He's been screwed by his ability that doesn't synergize well with his stats, and he's been screwed by his leader's ability as well, and he's been screwed by his color combination for what he's trying to achieve. So he's probably the worst leader in the game. Next we got Cassian Andor, probably the most underplayed leader in the game. I think there's a lot of people who don't understand how he works. Basically, the very big problem with Cassian Andor is like he's kind of competing with Sabine, which has been so much better as a red-white leader, aggressive leader. Cassian Andor is not an aggro leader because drawing card is not an aggro mechanic at all in this game. The way I like to play Cassian, and I think where you should be playing Cassian, is combination with green, of course, as usual, and then try to play the green, red, white combination that gives you access to some of the best early game plays in the game. The best 2 drops are in those colors, and basically you really play a lot of cheap units in the early stages of the game without using Cassian Andor's ability. And then once your hands start to become empty, you can use Cassian Andor's ability to draw cards. And the ability to draw a card every single turn is what really makes Cassian very strong in those kind of late game situations. So for me, he's more of a mid-range leader that plays a lot of cheap units, if that makes sense. So I think really the problem with Cassian Andor is, as I said, he's kind of a wannabe aggressive, but he's not really aggressive, which has been kind of a problem. As a deploy leader, he's okay. 4/6 Saboteur is nice. Is a bit under average. So I think he's definitely playable, and I think that the Cassian green-red mid-range deck is one of the most underplayed deck in the game, in my opinion. But he's obviously not great, so I'm going to rate this in the bottom of the seat here. Next we got Sabine. So Sabine is the best aggressive leader in the game by far. The three things that makes her particularly powerful as an aggro leader is her leader's ability, the ability to deal direct damage to base unconditionally. This also damage to your own base, but as the most aggressive deck in the game, you don't really care too much about that. Red-white is by far the best color combination for aggressiveness, and then you get to pair it with whatever you want. We've seen Sabine Red, Sabine Yellow, and Sabine Green, and even sometimes Sabine Blue. She's really playable in all those different shapes. Right now, the most popular version is Sabine Green, even though with Sabine Yellow has been historically the most popular deck, but recently the most popular has been Sabine Green. And she's simply just incredible. She's also, of course, the third thing that makes her the best aggressive leader in the game is obviously the fact that she deploys one turn earlier than everybody else, so she's the cheapest leader in the game. And she's not that easy to kill. She has 5 HP, and she does still 3 attack when she comes to play. And 3 attack may not sound like a lot, but 2 attack plus 1 damage from her ability, and 3 damage to base might not sound like a lot, but the fact that she gets to do that one turn earlier than everybody else makes it so it's actually pretty aggressive. And for all those reasons, Sabine is an incredible leader. I think really what makes Sabine so strong is that everything clicks perfectly together. Like, she is a very coherent playstyle. Everything kind of works well together with what she's trying to do. And sometimes that is more powerful than just straight raw power. And for that reason, I'm going to place her in A tier, at the top of A tier. What prevents me from putting Sabine Wren on S tier is the fact that currently, I think the meta is not super favorable for aggro. I think a lot of control decks have been able to adapt their playstyles to deal with aggro, and aggro still has a pretty bad matchup against Boba Fett. So even though I love Sabine, and she's by far the strongest aggressive leader in the game, I think that she struggles a lot. She's not super well positioned in the meta right now, because there's a lot of ways to counter. A lot of decks have been adapting to counter her specifically, and Boba, just the strongest leader in the game, happens to be countering her pretty hard. Moving on, we got Boba Fett. So you've heard his name a lot throughout my tier list videos. That's because he is the quintessential leader where the meta involves around him, and he's, spoiler alert, the strongest leader in the game. Why is he the strongest leader in the game? Well, he has everything you could ever want. The first thing he has is a very powerful leader's ability that allows you to, whenever you kill a unit, you can exhaust a resource. And this ability is completely free, doesn't require you to take initiative, doesn't cost an action, doesn't cost a resource, and you get to ready a resource. One resource on tap is not super useful because there's not that many things that cost 1 in the game. But once again, you can play, like, let's say you have 4 resources, you play something that costs 3 that deals with something, then you untap a resource, and then you can play a 2-drop. And that tempo gains is just incredibly powerful in Star Wars Unlimited. As I said earlier, tempo is everything in this game, and if you have an ability that gives you better tempo, it's really, really, really powerful. The other thing that is particularly powerful with Boba's ability is that it can be stacked with when he's deploying. So the way that works is you're on turn 4 or turn 3 if you happen to be able to ramp 1 turn earlier. You can basically play something that costs 5, kill something that can be a boss or a barrage or something like this. Then you can use Boba's ability as a leader to ready 1 resource. Then you can deploy Boba and attack with him, and then ready 2 resources, which means that you've basically ready 3 resources on the same turn. And coincidentally, Boba also happens to have access to some of the best 3-drop in the game, 7th Fleet Defender or a Boba Disintegrator, which means that basically on the same turn you can be playing Boba as a unit, a 5-drop or something that costs 5 and kills something, and the 3-drop. And also Boba happens to have access to some of the best 5-drop in the game. And this is called what we call in the game the Boba turn. And the Boba turn is just incredibly, incredibly powerful. So that's basically the first great thing going on with Boba. The second great thing with Boba is his stats. He's a 4/7 for 5 resources. There is no other card in the game, no other leader in the game that has the same, that's such a great stat for what he costs. And that is incredibly powerful. 7 HP is very tough to kill. 4 units is enough to do a lot of things in this game. Is just incredible on that perspective as well. Last but not least, but his color combo, Cunning Villainy, is an extremely good tempo color. that is extremely strong. It gives you access to some of the best cards in the game. Gives you access to Bosk, gives you access to Boba Disintegrator, and gives you access to No Good to Me Dead, gives you access to so many very, very powerful cards. And not only that, it also gives you access to the Fire Spray, to Fett's Fire Spray. And Fett's Fire Spray comes to play ready whenever Boba is your leader. Fett's Fire Spray is the strongest unit in the game. You could even argue the strongest card in the game in the context of a Boba deck. A 5/6 into space that comes into play ready is just incredibly powerful. So the combination of those three things made Boba the best leader in the game. You're gonna see him in green, you're gonna see him in red, you're gonna see him in yellow with the double yellow Boba deck, and all three of those decks are very, very powerful. The most popular one, and I think the most powerful one, is the green one, because it gives you access to all the great green cards, including, as I said many times, Energy Conversion Lab. And in my opinion, this leader is one cut above the rest. He's S tier in my opinion. The fact that Boba does naturally very well against aggro, and also can go toe-to-toe with control despite being a mid-range deck. Generally speaking, control decks beat mid-range decks. Makes it an incredibly powerful leader. It's not easy to counter at all. You really have to play very specific things if you want to counter Boba, and those things will not typically improve your matchup by so much. He's the best leader in the game, so without any debate in my opinion, and he's definitely one cut above the rest. Next we got Grand Admiral Thrawn. So Grand Admiral Thrawn, probably one of the most weird and obnoxious leaders to play. The fact that you have to look at the people's deck on every turn is kind of finicky, but with all that being said, he's a great leader. His ability to exhaust enemy units for 1 resources is pretty powerful, because it's relatively easy to use, and it sometimes can be a bit awkward if you don't find if you're a bit unlucky and you don't find the right units on top to that and you want to exhaust something that is expensive, but it still remains a pretty decent ability. Where really Grand Admiral Thrawn shine is on his leader. Like, the leader is very strong, comes under 3/9, so very strong stat lines, and once again can attack, kill something, and tap something else. Comes to play also not so late, comes into play at 6, which is not so bad for a leader that has such an impressive stats, and he's also Imperial Official, which are 2 very relevant traits. So what's the problem with Thrawn? Thrawn has 2 major problems. The first problem is that he's definitely a control leader, but not in a control color. Black, yellow is not a great color for control. It doesn't have real removal spells, like real removals, like all of the control tools that yellow-black has access to are stuff that buys you time, like Waylay or No Good to Me Dead, but nothing that really permanently deals with things. And whenever you're playing control, you need things that permanently deals with things. That's the first problem. The other problem is that there's simply no great late game cards in yellow-black. Yellow-black don't have any powerful late game units. That means that whenever you're playing Thrawn, you're gonna have less late game than other decks in the game. Basically the card that was supposed to be the late game for Thrawn, the Chimera, is basically not very powerful. If Chimera was stronger, Thrawn would be a lot better, I can tell you that much. So that's the first problem, is that there's sort of once again, not a great synergy between what Thrawn wants to do as a leader and the color combination in which he's in. The second major issue with Thrawn is the fact that he's competing with Boba, and is the leader in the same color combination once again, and it's going to be very hard to justify playing Thrawn over Boba in almost any deck. So for all those reasons, Thrawn end up being not so great. There's a couple of things that Thrawn does that Thrawn is probably a better control leader for Boba Fett. The problem is yellow-black is not a control color, so that's the big thing. So a strong leader, but unfortunately a strong leader that is not in the right color aspect combination in my opinion, which prevents him from being as good as it should be, but I'm still going to place him on the C tier here, definitely a playable leader in my opinion. Next, we're moving on to my favorite leader, at least my favorite leader in terms of gameplay, and that is Han Solo. Han Solo is, in my opinion, the strongest leader ability in the game. The ability to tap, to basically to exhaust, to get additional resources from your hand by discarding a card is incredibly powerful. So I've said before, I say it again, that tempo is far more important than card advantage in this game. And Han Solo allows you to do that. It allows you to trade card advantage to get less cards in order to get extra resources. And that is incredibly powerful. Also the resource of course comes to play only for one turn, but there's tons of interesting synergies you can do with this, where you basically put the card as a resources, then the resource gets defeated, get discarded, and then that allows you to feed your discard pile, and then you can have some interesting synergy with the discard pile. So Han Solo is also one of the most difficult leader in the game to play, because you effectively have to think about when to use his ability. Basically every single turn you're going to play, you're going to have almost 100% more options than any other deck in the game, because you can always have the option to do you use an ability and then suddenly you can play 2 or even 3 more cards than what you normally would, and it makes sequencing super complicated. But if you can master this, he's an incredibly powerful leader. So another cool thing with Han Solo ability is that it allows you to deploy Han Solo almost always one turn earlier. So he's a leader that comes to play on turn 5, but you can always use Han Solo's ability, get an extra resource out, and then play your leader one turn earlier, which is very powerful. As a leader, he's not amazing, 4-6, but once again, 4-6, 4-5 is okay. But what is very powerful is, just like for Boba, his leader ability can stack with his unit ability to basically get 2 extra resources on one turn. So the way that works is, so you're on turn 4, so you get access to 5 resources. You use Han Solo's ability, you get 6 resources. You deploy Han Solo, then you attack, you deploy, and then you have access to 7 resources. 7 ready resources, and then you can play a 7 drop 2 turns earlier, which is very, very powerful. And there's a lot of very strong 7 drops in the game. Mostly the best 7 drops is going to be Han Solo Reluctant Hero, so the Han Solo unit, or U-Wing Reinforcement, which has been an incredible boost for Han Solo, especially Han Solo Green, which in my opinion is the best version of it. The stats are not super spectacular, but that's okay, because that's not really what he's meant to. He's meant to be an accelerator that accelerates a very specific moment of the game, not necessarily. So the inconvenience of that, of course, is that this is very card hungry. Han Solo is by far the leader that does the most cards advantage, so you have to make up for that by having some card draw into your deck. But as I said, once you had it, so this is one of the only leader in the game that really needs card draw more than any other leader in the game. So Han Solo's, despite having one of the strongest, I mean, in my opinion, the strongest leader's ability in the game, has not really done so well in the meta, and there's a good reason for, and there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that he gets out countered by Boba Fett, and that's a big problem. Whenever you are trying to build a competitive deck and your competitive deck doesn't do very well against the most popular deck in the game, that is obviously a big problem. The arch enemy of Han Solo, very fitting, very thematically fitting, is the card No Good to Be Dead, which is the Carbonite thing. And if you put Han Solos on Carbonites, the turn he's supposed to deploy, it's a big deal, because what happens is that whenever you have Han Solo, you're trying to ramp from 5 to 7. You deploy Han Solo, and one of the few cards that can really block Han Solo is someone's playing a Carbonite on him, and then suddenly you're stuck with only 6 resources that you can't do much with, because most of the great cards are at 7 resources, not 6. And not only that, after this, you have Han Solo blocked for yet another turn where you won't be able to get to that 7 drop, because next turn you're going to lose your 6 resources that you had from deploying Han Solo, and then once again you're stuck again. That is just such a big problem. Also, the key card of the card, which is Han Solo Reluctant Hero, only 6 attack, not quite enough to kill Boba. So Han Solo, this is some of the reasons for that. But Han Solo has just been struggling so hard against Boba, and has been a major problem. With that being said, I think Han Solo, just like Cassian, is a pretty underplayed leader. I think a lot of people also do not know how to play the leader because he's quite difficult to play. But I think the leader is very strong against other things. I think U-Wing reinforcement, if you're playing the green version and you're playing U-Wing reinforcements, Han Solo has been a lot stronger, and in my opinion, well deserving of the beast tier spot. So the other weakness of Han Solo I didn't talk about is the fact that white-yellow is the weakest aspect combination in the game. Really, this aspect combination does not help Han Solo. Yes, it gives you access to Han Solo Reluctant Hero, it gives you access to Falcon, which is very strong in Han Solo, because in the Falcon, you can basically pay for the upkeep for the Falcon tax using the temporary resources of Han Solo that you're going to get rid of. So that's nice, but outside of those two cards, the deck really, yellow-white really doesn't provide much of anything that is useful to Han Solo. Actually, yellow gives card advantage, which is not good for Han Solo. We really want to have card advantage. So that's also been kind of a problem for Han. But he's still, in my opinion, a very good leader. As I said, if Boba Fett did not exist, I think Han Solo would be an A-tier leader for sure. He's just a strong leader. Last, we got Jyn Erso. So Jyn Erso is a card that at the beginning I thought was going to be very good. Her ability is free and easy to use, and can be useful in a variety of different situations. And she comes into play at a 4/7 for 6. But Jyn Erso has a couple of major problems. The first problem is that her ability is not nearly as good as I thought it was at the beginning. So the ability in Constructed, at the very least, is very situational. It's good in Draft and Limited, but in Constructed, the ability is not as good. The second major issue that I have with Jyn is, once again, the fact that she is in yellow-white combination, which is, in my opinion, the weakest color combo in the game. So that also hurts her a lot. And finally, her stats are okay, but they're not particularly amazing. 4/7 for 6 is okay, but it's not like Boba, who has those stats, but for 1 cost less. So overall, she's been underpowered, and in my opinion, there is no, if you really want to play yellow-white, there is no reason to play her over an Han Solo. If you want to play a yellow-white mid-range deck, there's just no reason to play her over Han Solo. So I'm going to put her at the top of D tier, but yeah, she's simply not that great. And here you have it. This is my tier list of leaders for Star Wars Unlimited. This is obviously for Constructed. I think that all the metagame is going to be mostly composed out of those 8 leaders. There are some specific meta, some specific circumstances when you can justify playing the leader in C tiers, and the D tiers are pretty much unplayable. Basically, C tier are the leaders that are almost there. They are the leaders they just need a little something to get into the meta. The B tiers are kind of more, they're good leaders, but they require a very specific meta to work. For example, Vader requires the meta to have no aggro decks. Han Solo requires the meta to have no Boba Fett. That kind of thing. Leia is a very strong deck, but arguably weaker than Sabine. Like that kind of thing. So those are kind of like more situationally metagame leaders. And the core of the meta is going to be oriented toward those 4 leaders. I think Iden and Krennic are very much the same leaders. They're very much they're not the same card obviously, but the deck that they're very similar decks. So for me, they're kind of like, yeah, you can play one or the other. So the meta is going to be oriented toward those 3 decks, which is the Sabine aggro, the Iden/Krennic control, and the Boba midrange. So the meta is really going to involve around those 3 decks for the most part. Anyway, so this is it. We've basically ranked every single Star Wars Unlimited card for Spark of Rebellion. Thank you so much for following this channel and for watching every single of those videos. I know it was a very long journey, and if you really like this content, please subscribe so I can put out more videos. And I promise I'm done with the tier list for now. I'm going to be focusing on more deck decks and maybe some of my hot takes on the game, and maybe on the hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. I hope that this was informative. It was a long journey to do all those tier lists, but I think it's very worthwhile. I think I'm the only person who's ranked every single card in the game for Constructed, and I have a lot of experience with the game, so I think that this ranking might not be perfect. As I said, there's certainly going to be things that are going to be discovered along the way, and I really wish there will be a lot of things that will be discovered, that some leaders will have some secret builds that nobody thought about, that's going to be a lot better, and so on, and maybe we're finally going to find out which one of Krennic and Iden is the best, and maybe somebody is going to crack the code with Han Solo and make him much stronger than what he is, where he currently is. There's certainly a lot of exciting stuff that's going to happen, but I think this is as good as a starting point you could possibly have in terms of how the community in general evaluates those leaders. I don't think many people have disagreed with my ranking, so I think if you're looking to have a decent starting point in terms of how you evaluate all those cards for Constructed, I think this is it. So thank you so much for following my channel, and we'll see you next time with another video.